Following the delivery of the budget speech by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana yesterday, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, released a statement expressing disappointment with the government, saying the budget failed to seize the moment to respond to various challenges workers, the society and the economy are facing. To unpack this, we are joined via Zoom by COSATU's acting national spokesperson and parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and good morning to you. You find the budget speech underwhelming, and you also consider it a bean counting exercise. Please elaborate on that.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. Look, I think our frustration that we feel that the challenges facing society and workers and the economy and the state are so huge. We really needed a much more aggressive, much more bold and decisive budget. At times, government, we think, trade is too much focus on managing the debt. And we agree the debt needs to be managed, needs to be reduced and so forth. But for us, the way to do that is to grow the economy, to allow businesses to thrive. Let's create jobs, let's pay workers a better wage. That creates a revenue that government needs to pay down the debt and to fund public services. But simply to say we're going to reduce expenditure and somehow think the economy is going to grow, we think that doesn't make economic sense. But there are some positive parts in the budget we do welcome, and we hope they'll succeed. But we do feel that there was also a missed opportunity to give more relief and support to the poor and the unemployed. The president has spoken in the State of the Nation address 2 weeks before and said we're going to increase and extend the SOD grant. So the SOD grant has been extended for another year. That's fantastic news. It's going to give relief to 8 million unemployed persons receiving it. But it's not acceptable that government hasn't adjusted it once for inflation since the start in 2020. Yet politicians who pass the budget, they make sure to give themselves an increase. Can't be correct. The Presidential Employment Program has helped 1.7 million young people earn a salary, enter the labor market, gain skills and experience, and hopefully this will help them to find long-term employment. And we have a crisis of youth unemployment of 60%. Yet we have not seen government increasing the presidential promised stimulus budget. In fact, they've been decreasing it for strange reasons. So there's a 7 billion rand allocated to it for now, which will help 400,000 young people. We really had hoped government would have been much more bold and say, let's increase it to accommodate 1 million people by April and 2 million by November, because we have to break the backbone of youth unemployment.
And how important is the government, why do you think the government should, work hard in ending load shedding? Because I believe it also affects the working industry, as so many companies have, had to decrease or retrench some of the workers. If load shedding was dealt with, how much of an impact would that be in terms of, the labor industry in the country?
No, I mean, look, so on the electricity front, I think let's leave aside the current 2-week load shedding bumps we've experienced. But if you just take a step back and look at how bad things were a year ago, January, when we had about 12 hours of load shedding a day, when it was an absolute calamity, things have improved significantly on the electricity front. We can see green shoots, we can see light at the end of the tunnel. ESCOM workers have really done excellent work in terms of revamping, escalating maintenance of existing power stations. New generation capacity is coming on grid. Government has agreed to COSATU's proposal of giving ESCOM that 250 billion rand worth of debt relief, and that's being rolled out. So that's fantastic. We need to do more because, as we can see with the current bumps of load shedding, we're not out of the woods yet. ESCOM's generation capacity is extremely fragile. It's often aging. And so we were quite heartened when the president announced in SONA that they're going to invest in an additional 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines, because that's really going to unlock renewable energy in the 3 Cape provinces. That's really going to be a game changer in terms of shifting the needle. But we do need to give more support, as we've seen, to ESCOM. It is our #1 economic asset, and ESCOM needs to be given every possible support so that we can finally end load shedding. But we do think we are making progress, but still things are quite fragile on that front.
You represent workers as COSATU, and one of the things to take out from the speech is that 60% of the budget, which amounts to 3.7 trillion rands, was allocated to teachers, doctors, as well as nurses. What is your take on that? Is it enough?
So that's a slight misinterpretation. So the public service wage bill, which is different than the social wage, public service wage bill, what we pay teachers and police officers, for example, that's 31% of the budget. In fact, that's been decreasing, and we're a little bit concerned about that because We're seeing rising levels of vacancies in critical frontline services like police stations, home affairs, hospitals, clinics, schools, and we really need to be reinforcing them because we can't be surprised when you have long queues at home affairs if you only have half the staff complement you require. We can't be surprised when police are struggling to deal with crime when the headcount has been shrinking. But we have seen some good news in the budget. The police headcount has been increasing by about 10,000 a year for the past 2 years. We can see some movement there. More needs to be done, obviously, to fill prosecutorial vacancies, home affairs, hospitals, and so forth. But the 60%, that's the social wage. So that speaks to a broader package of investments which assist poor working class communities, whether it's investments in housing for people who don't have homes, whether it's an SFA student financial aid scheme for those who can't afford tertiary education, or it's free basic meals at schools for learners who can't afford meals. So that speaks to that. And that really is one of the major achievements of the ANC government since 1994. They managed to transform a budget where 60% of it is invested into poor working class communities. And that is a major thing. There obviously is many challenges, but it is a huge, huge achievement. It's a very progressive one. And the fact that look, and there are limitations naturally, but the fact that government provides social grants or some sort of social assistance to 27 million people, almost half the country, that's an indication of a government which cares for the people, but also it's a red light too that we need to actually fix the economy because you can't sustain a society where half the nation is dependent upon some sort of relief from the state and only about a quarter of the nation is having formal employment. So we need to reverse those ratios. But in the short and medium term, it is, these are the kind of progressive interventions government needs to do.
And Matthew, you did speak about Eskom, and Eskom is not the only struggling SOE in the country. We have, you've indicated as COSATU that you also want the revival of Metro Rail, Post Office, as well as the Post Bank and the SABC. Please elaborate on that.
Yeah, look, so all of our state-owned enterprises, until a decade ago, were world-class institutions. They provided valuable services to society. They helped grow their sector of the economy. I mean, for example, SAA was a leading airline in Africa. We have seen some revival in there that we hope is going to be a sign of better times. We are worried that government is not moving fast enough with regard to some of the other embattled SOEs. We don't think retrenching 6,000 workers at the post office is the right approach. We should rather see how to repivot it, how to expand the products it offers to society to attract customers. But we don't think we should be simply abandoning them. Similarly with Denel, the workers there went through a horrific time, not being paid for months. Yet Denel, South Africa is one of the leading armaments countries in the world. It's a real capacity. But we need to be smart about how we restructure these SOEs, how we reposition them to provide the kind of support they need to give to the economy. I think our most urgent worry right now is around Transnet and Metro Rail. Transnet is key to transporting mining, manufacturing, agricultural products to the destinations on time. If you don't fix Transnet, both in freight rail and the ports, we'll lose thousands of jobs in those sectors. We'll see billions of rands of taxes owed to the state not being able to be paid. That's going to be a crisis. So there has been some improvements in Transnet, but we are worried we're not moving fast enough in terms of giving them support to manage the debt, to invest in infrastructure and machinery, to train the staff, to expand the capacity of the ports. And one very difficult thing, we don't know exactly how to address it, is the pandemic of cable theft, which is really crippling transit railway lines, and it's very difficult for the police to be everywhere at all times. So even in society, we also need to play a role in reporting those who steal cable theft, not indulging in criminality. Metro Rail 2 is in a similar crisis. There has been some progress in reopening, I think about 27 lines, which bizarrely were allowed to collapse during the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope to see all remaining lines open this year because Metro Rail is key to urban transport. It's key to transporting 10 million workers and commuters in our cities to get to school, to get to work on time. And if Metro Rail can be as functional as it used to be 10 years ago, that will help boost the economy in our cities. That helps make factories and workplaces more productive. Workers can get to work on time in a full day's salary. But government has to be much more aggressive on these things. We can't simply see SOEs bleeding and we just simply say, well, let's hope for better days. We need to be aggressive, give the support, and enlist law enforcement, enlist security assistance just to assist with this regard. Because to be fair to Eskom and Transnet, they're not prosecutors. They can't deal with the issues of corruption. That's where law enforcement must come in. And to be honest, the NPA has really been missing on action on many of these issues.
Matthew Parks, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, thank you. You too.
That is Matthew Parks of COSA, to the national spokesperson, the acting national spokesperson, reacting to the budget speech that was delivered yesterday by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. They are saying that it failed to address issues that the society as well as the economy is facing in these current times. South Africa's unemployment rate is alarmingly high, and some citizens have given up in finding employment. The country's poverty statistics are increasing every day and is all doom and gloom looking at the current economy. Via Zoom, we are joined by the president of GEWUSA, Mr. Mametlwe Sibei. GEWUSA stands for the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa. Mr. Sibei, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us here on Pitso. You've released a statement, and you know, you are not happy with the stats. Please elaborate on that. Mr. Sibei?
Well, these statistics. Hello?
Yes, please let's go back. Let's start. Please give us your reaction to the crime stats, unemployment stats in the country.
Yes, I'm saying these statistics are numbers, but behind these numbers, it is lives of many people who have been devastated by horrific levels of unemployment, which are not getting better, but getting worse. In the last quarter of 2023, what the statistics are showing is that we have lost 22,000 jobs. And of course, overall, unemployment has grown by about 46,000 jobs to 7.9 million. And this is only, half a picture. It does not even begin to tell the whole story. The whole story includes 3 million people that are discouraged from seeking employment after, looking for employment for months and years without end, and have given up at the prospects of this economy to making a meaningful and gainful employment of their ability and willingness to work. And I think that is an indictment on this government, on its neoliberal policies, and in the final analysis of the capitalist system as such.
44.3%, that is where the unemployment stands for the youth in the country. And we've heard numerous times the government saying that they are making strides to ensure that, unemployment is a thing of the past, especially for the youth. What is your take on that? I mean, the number is very high, and every now and then we hear the government saying that we're working, to ensure that the youth of this country get jobs. So what is your take as GEWUSA?
I mean, that number is catastrophic enough. But as I've already mentioned, it only paints a partial picture. It does not include in it 3 million people who are discouraged from seeking employment, and does not even account for many young people who are not in employment, not in education, not in training, whose whole lives are being laid to waste by unemployment, and of course, a closing opportunities in terms of access to higher education. I mean, we have seen at the beginning of this year, and I mean, I don't know if just me, but I mean, I've seen that university education is becoming more and more difficult to access. Where it was a situation in the past, it has gotten worse. And that is because of the cuts in spending on higher education, in higher education infrastructure, in terms of subsidies that are given to university to be able to build more classes, more rooms, and more accommodation to accommodate students. But also, the funding that is, the 16 billion cut on spending, or rather funding of NEFSAS, the financial aid scheme and so on. But it's not just higher education, it's also the schooling system. So when you look at the entire system, right, from a job market to access to education, these are avenues where people either seeking jobs or seeking opportunities to learn in preparation of future jobs. All opportunities are closing, and I think that is an indictment on the system and incapacity to resolve the crisis facing the working class.
And let's talk about the issues of unemployed doctors. I'm sure you can recall that in the recent weeks or months, there are qualified unemployed doctors who were marching to different provincial legislatures, saying that we are looking for jobs. And, we often hear that the government saying that there are no jobs, but also at the same time, there is a shortage of doctors as well in the country. What is your take on that? What do you think should be done in order to create employment for these doctors?
I mean, again, it really reveals the bankruptcy of this government and its program to overcome the crisis of unemployment. That we could have doctors educated at a huge expense to society. I mean, think about it. These are people who spend approximately 7 years at university, been trained with subsidies amounting to hundreds of thousands of hard-to-earn taxpayers' money, only to be laid to waste in unemployment precisely at the time when our public healthcare and healthcare system in general suffers a chronic shortages of doctors, of nurses, and other health practitioners. People in this country are dying of the most basic diseases and illnesses and injuries that can be easily overcome. Why? Because our hospitals, our schools are understaffed. And why is this situation where we have a highly trained doctors lying at home when there is a chronic shortage? It's because a system of capitalism entails a situation, where we have society with enormous amount of wealth, including the industrial capacity to create even more. This wealth is being hoarded by the capitalist class who owns the commanding heights of the economy, who owns the industry, the banks, the mines, and all of that. And they are only investing where they can make profit. And in government, which is committed to neoliberal policies, instead, amongst others, of taxing this wealth in order that we're able to fund more services, including employment of more doctors and nurses, they are not. Why? Because they want to protect the higher profitability of businesses and the capitalist class. And this is a problem we have. We need a government in this country that is committed to distribute wealth in the interest of the working class and the poor. And that means, one, we need a taxation, right, of big corporations. This government has been reducing corporate tax. Under apartheid, the corporate tax was at 50%. For 30 years, ANC has been reducing that to 28% 2 years ago, and reduced further to 27% 1 year ago, and so on. We're standing at 27%. That is the reason we have no money to fund the public healthcare system, to fund the education system, to rebuild our roads, to build homes for everybody. And in the course of doing all of that, creating jobs in millions, that we need to reduce unemployment and poverty, as well as widening inequalities.
Mr. Sibeye, we've heard on numerous occasions the president of the country saying that there's a shortage of skills in South Africa, whereas when you look, there are so many skilled young people in the country who are looking for employment. But then perhaps, can you just maybe elaborate, what are these skills that the president is referring to?
I mean, that is just outrageous. And I think, quite frankly, it's a slander on many young people, hundreds of thousands of whom have a post-matric qualifications, including doctors we have spoken about, including nurses, but it's not only that. We have seen young people with degrees, with diplomas in engineering, so-called critical skills that are required in massive public infrastructure projects we need to ensure that we have a reliable energy supply in this country, a water supply in this country. We build our roads, we build homes for all the people, millions of people that are homeless and staying in informal settlement. We have all those skills, and those skills are unemployed in growing numbers for that matter. The reality here is this, and I think this is what people need to understand. There is this, it's a false narrative that government, and I think the capitalist class promote, that basically crisis of skills or rather unemployment is because of the skills. But even if we didn't have an evidence that there are many and hundreds of thousands of people that are unemployed with this qualification, the reality is historically, skills are created by the economy and by the jobs, not the other way around. It's not skills that create jobs, it's jobs that create skills. People forget that not so long ago, we didn't have a much higher and public education system in the way that we have. But as the economy was growing, as new industries were actually developing, people were acquiring skills, learning by trial and error in the course of employment in those areas. So the crisis is not with the education system. The crisis is not even lack of willingness on the part of many of those, engineers, doctors, nurses, teachers that are laying unemployed, in townships, in villages in this country. The crisis is that you have an economy relying and based on a private ownership, and with the capitalist class that is holding at this present moment hundreds of billions of rents because they do not think there is a profitable outlet for their investment. There was a report that showed that big non-financial corporations are holding about 1.4 trillion rands and so on. That is a money that government must expropriate and employ it. But more than that, we think ultimately we need to bring under a public ownership through nationalizations of the mines, of the banks, of the factories, and the key sectors of the economy, to ensure that on the basis of this public ownership and a democratic control and management by the working class, the wealth in the economy, the industrial capacity, which is enormous, is placed in the service of society as a whole, to build homes, to build the roads, to build clinics and hospitals, schools, and of course, to ensure that we put young people into employment. We need to be able to do that. And we can't do that on the basis of capitalism that is in organic crisis and a crisis of profitability where the capitalist class is refusing to invest.
Mr. Sibeye, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
That is Mr. Mametlwe Sibeye. He is the head or the leader of the Giwusa, which is the organization that represents workers, talking to us about the unemployment stats, saying that they are alarming and the government should do much to create jobs.